cases is on the rise, and we see optimism go up every time COVID cases go down. The death cases are rising. That's also the time when optimism suffers.
Daily infections were down and death toll was at 15 when SWS did the April survey.
It's actually a recovery from the record low 38% in September of 2021. It was the time when the Delta variant was really at its height.
Now that COVID cases are on the rise again, we asked people on the street if they think we've been through the worst of this pandemic.
Hindi naman masyado. Kahit may COVID pa rin, may pan-COVID pa rin, kaya ingat pa rin.
Hindi pa po kasi sa ngayon po marami pa rin po nagpa-positive kahit may mga vaccine na po tayo na or booster po.
Hindi pa po kasi may mga lumalabas pa pong iba't ibang variants ng COVID.
Those we ask are also afraid of getting COVID-19. True enough, despite high optimism, the SWS survey shows 88% of Filipinos worry for themselves or their family getting infected with COVID-19. Highest even when compared to past surveys during the spread of Ebola, swine flu, bird flu, and SARS.
Compared to those past pandemics, people's fear of catching COVID-19 is higher.
Health officials are asking the public to keep their guard up as we try to live with the virus. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
The COVID-19 situation is not getting any better in the United States. Data from Johns Hopkins University shows the U.S. has reported its 200,000th death from the virus this year. This grim benchmark as experts warn about the dangers of Omicron subvariant BA.5. Over 1,025,000 people have died of COVID-19 in the U.S. Back here at home, authorities in Aklan province are ramping up efforts to monitor visitors to the world-famous tourist island of Boracay. Calibo Mayor Juris Sucro says he ordered the municipal health office to tighten screening at the Calibo International Airport. He's also requested to again deploy contact tracers in the town and Boracay Island. From 0 cases last month, Calibo now has 19 active COVID cases. Malaytao, meanwhile, has listed 38 cases on the island from July 1 to 18. A majority are South Korean tourists. Now that COVID-19 cases continue to rise, many are still waiting for the government's go signal to get a second booster. But the health department appeals for patience. On Politics as Usual Wednesday, the agency again explained there is still not enough evidence to support calls for a 4th dose of the vaccine for the general public. So far, the DOH has requested the Food and Drug Administration and the Health Technology Assessment Council to study the second booster for the immunocompromised and those aged 50 to 59.
We need to wait for the decision or the recommendation of FDA so that they can amend their EUA to expand to these sectors. Up until we can get that, and we cannot issue any guidelines until then. So we have to wait, we have to be patient. Our experts are saying that up until now also, our first booster shot is still effective against the severe forms of the disease.
The DOH met with FDA officials on Monday to discuss the matter. The private sector renewed a call for a second booster because of over 1.5 million doses expiring by the end of the month. Another official joining the Marcos administration, Yogi Filemon Ruiz, is now the new commissioner of the Bureau of Customs. President Marcos administered the oath of Ruiz Wednesday. Ruiz previously served as the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency regional chief in Central Visayas before moving to the Customs Bureau in 2017 as the director of its enforcement and security services. Ruiz faces the challenge of leading the agency, which has been plagued by corruption allegations, in hand on a program to improve the justice system. Justice Secretary Boying Remulla says the initiative aims to beef up prosecution. He cited data that shows the conviction rate is less than 25% for criminal cases, including plea bargaining.
We are not really getting a passing rate. This is not a standard that we can live with in the next few years, we have to change this drastically. When I was analyzing everything and I was discussing with my fellow lawyers the problem of our justice system, what became very apparent was that enforcement and prosecution did not seem to work well together.
Interior Secretary Benher Abalos says there is a need to assess the qualifications of police investigators. The police force has more than 22,700 investigators, but only 123 of that number have a law degree.
We'll have to review. Paano ba kinukuha mga investigator? Ito ba'y volunteer system? Ito ba'y may examination? Kaya ba nila o hindi sa ibaba?
And the DOJ will continue the previous administration's plan to digitize jail records in a bid to fast-track the release of eligible inmates. The move is expected to help decongest jails. The Migrant Workers Department launches a new initiative that seeks to immediately respond to repatriation requests from Filipinos abroad. Tristan Odalo tells us more about the One Repatriation Command Center.
A single approach to help distressed overseas Filipino workers wanting to come home. This is the One Repatriation Command Center launched by the Migrant Workers Department.
Magkatulong-tulungan kami, imbis na magkaturo-turuan, kung paano mapauwi ang isang naghihinagpis na OFW.
Migrant Workers Chief Susan Tuts-Oble says the center will keep OFW families informed while repatriation is ongoing.
Families of OFWs will be able to walk in and provide information.
Ople says she had witnessed how OFWs or even their families struggle to get help from the government agencies when it comes to repatriation.
Wala nang umiiyak na nanay na nangungutang sa mga kapitbahay o sa kamag-anak para lang sumakay ng barko para pumunta na Maynila, maghanap ng tamang opisina na makakatulong sa kanya para mapauwi yung kanyang binubugbog o nilalapastangan na anak.
Requests for assistance can be made personally at the Command Center Help Desk or through their agency's 24/7 hotline or email at repat@dmw.gov.ph. Repatriation requests will be verified until they reach a case study officer who will coordinate with government agencies for appropriate action. The Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA will encode the information in a centralized database for the information of all those involved in the repatriation request. 20 case studies officers from OWA and a third-party agency will accommodate calls.
Off-site sa service providers, we can take in as many as around 2,000 to 3,000 a day.
The Philippine Overseas Employment Agency has received close to 10,000 repatriation requests from 2021 to 2022 and OWA with over 9,000 requests. Overseas workers say they want to come home to avoid being locked up by their employers, contract violations, maltreatment, and medical conditions related to COVID-19, among others. Middle Eastern countries are in the top 5 with most repatriation cases. The Migrant Workers Department also tells OFWs and their families to manage expectations when making repatriation requests. The Philippine government also needs to coordinate with host or destination countries to facilitate repatriation once cleared. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
Up next, what do senators hope to hear from President Marcos during his first State of the Nation address? And a Filipino-American singer is set to play Belle of Beauty and the Beast in an anniversary special. Keep it here on Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
RPN DXKP Pagadian, ang inyong Radyo Ronda. RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world, pinaagi sa FB page, karon mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play og Apple Store, YouTube og Twitter. Alang sa mas kipakuskan nga mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran og kalingawan. Ang mas kipakuskan nga inyong Radyo Ronda. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Welcome back. 4 days before the State of the Nation address, we asked senators what they hope to hear from President Marcos. Amor Santos tells us their expectations reflect those of most Filipinos.
The Senate session hall reopens on Monday for the first regular session of the 19th Congress. Senators will be here in the morning before attending the joint session at the Batasang Pambansa for the President's SONA. Neophyte lawmaker Robin Padilla couldn't hide his excitement.
Asawa ko ang nagpe-prepare. Ako, siyempre, excited ako. Hindi pa ako naka-experience nung nandun ka na, di ba? Yung hindi ka third person eh. Ito, ngayon, talagang wow.
Padilla specifically wants to know President Marcos' plan for programs started by the Duterte administration, including the war on drugs and Build, Build, Build. Like many Filipinos, senators expect to hear the real state of the nation, as well as concrete plans for the next 6 years, especially in terms of pandemic recovery, agriculture, food security, economy, health, and education.
He can be very honest na ito ang mga problema ng bansa. Di ba? Kasi inabutan niya yan as president. Okay. But what we need is the creativity and the innovation in facing it.
Unang-una na yung food crisis para hindi maging food catastrophe. Yung solusyon sa presyo ng diesel.
Most senior Senator Lauren Legarda hopes the president's plan on pandemic recovery is attuned to addressing climate issues. She also wants to hear the president's foreign policy and stance on the South China Sea dispute. Senator Sonny Angara wants details on the planned partnerships with the private sector. Also a priority concern is the country's 12.7 trillion peso debt, according to Senator Coco Pimentel, who's eyeing the minority leadership. For returning Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, President Marcos should also take steps to unite the country following the divisive elections.
I'm not saying ilibing yung mga issues na valid, but it's time to work together.
It remains to be seen whether Senators Alan and Pia Cayetano would reinforce what's seen as a two-member minority bloc in the Senate. Opposition Senator Risa Ontiveros maintains the minority is ready to do its job with or without new allies.
Ako naman, bilang oposisyon, kahit parang gusto nilang i-evoke ulit yung imahe ng strongman, importanteng manatili yung partisipasyon ng mamamayan. Sana matuto ang kasalukuyang administrasyon sa nakaraan.
Meanwhile, Senator Mig Zubiri is expected to be elected Senate President, and he continues to promise an independent supermajority. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
In the 18th Congress, most priority measures of former President Duterte hurdled the House of Representatives despite internal power struggles and challenges brought about by the pandemic. Now with President Marcos' cousin poised to become Speaker, what can Filipinos expect from the House in the 19th Congress? Cian Arcangel reports.
Save for two controversial bills, the supermajority in the House of Representatives of the 18th Congress delivered on most of the former president's agenda. Congressional support was strong. 23 out of the 27 bills certified by Duterte became laws, according to the Presidential Legislative Liaison Office. Key legislation from the House include the Anti-Terrorism Act, reducing corporate income tax rates, and amendments to the Retail Trade Liberalization and Foreign Investments Act. The bills were passed despite a leadership tussle that rocked the House in October 2020. An informal session at a clubhouse outside the Batasang Pambansa elected Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco as Speaker after Taguig Representative Alan Peter Cayetano refused to honor their term-sharing deal. University of the Philippines Political Science Associate Professor Jean Franco credits unhampered lawmaking to the bureaucracy in and out of the House.
You have the Presidential Legislative Liaison Office, you have the Secretariat of the House, that in a way, will also try to maintain a semblance of continuity.
But it was not smooth sailing for two controversial proposals by the president. His push for federalism and restoring the death penalty did not get past committee level. Franco says lawmakers were not ready for a major change in the government system.
Federalism is such a huge endeavor and would entail a total overhaul not only of the political system but as well as the economic system. It's difficult, it's expensive, and I think it also lacks more detailed explanation.
When the 19th Congress opens on July 25th, majority of representatives are expected to elect a speaker, later Representative Martin Romualdez, the cousin of President Bongbong Marcos. Romualdez says he expects Congress to be receptive to many of the administration's priority measures.
No hindrances are anticipated. We've talked about it with the economic managers, with their counterparts in the Senate. We're looking forward to a very, very smooth, functioning Congress, both houses po.
On Monday, President Marcos will deliver his first State of the Nation address before a jam-packed plenary hall. At the same podium and rostrum where his late father, former President Ferdinand Edralin Marcos, delivered his first speech at the newly built Batasang Pambansa 44 years ago. With 31 million votes to his credit, the nation waits for directions from President Marcos to navigate through a period of health and economic crisis. Cian Arcangel, CNN, Philippines.
Plenty of notable firsts in President Marcos's first SONA. We give you a rundown with facts about the chief executive in part 2 of my SONA series. This is the first time for a president whose father built this Batasang Pambansa and delivered the first SONA here in 1978. The elder Marcos declared martial law in 1972 threw his critics in jail and padlocked Congress, the old legislative building, now the National Museum, where the younger Marcos took his oath on June 30th. FM Sr. wanted his own Congress, a parliament of sorts, so he had his wife Imelda build the Batasan, a completely new edifice symbolic of his Bagong Lipunan or New Society slogan. It housed the interim Society slogan. It housed the interim Batasang Pambansa from 1978 to 1984 and the regular Batasang Pambansa from 1984 to 1986. The opposition called both a rubber stamp parliament. When democracy and the presidential system of government were restored in 1986, the Senate took up residency in the old legislative building, and the House of Representatives ended up in the Batasan, where in some strange twist of fate, the elder Marcos's widow, daughter, and son served as district representatives. Another first after 6 years of Rodrigo Duterte.
Talagang bully ako.
We won't hear a president either cursing, speaking extemporaneously, or deviating from a prepared speech, which Duterte did in every single one of his addresses, with the glaring exception of 2018, where he stuck to the script, speaking for only 48 minutes. But that was because of another first. The chief executive was made to wait because the House of Representatives was busy unseating its speaker. And still another first. Bongbong Marcos is the first president to deliver a SONA who is a junior. There's more trivia that has nothing to do with firsts, but everything to do with BBM. He is the 17th president, but the 7th president of the 5th Republic that came into being when the 1987 Constitution was ratified. The third child of a president to become president in his or her own right. The first was Gloria Arroyo, daughter of Diosdado Macapagal, president from 1961 to 1965. The second was Noynoy Aquino, son of Cory Aquino, president from 1986 to 1992. Marcos is the 11th senator to become president, the 11th to have served as congressman, the second president from Ilocos Norte, the 11th president to be proclaimed by a legislature, and the 7th president to be elected to a single 6-year term, a provision expressly placed in the 1987 Constitution to guard against another dictatorship, not unless a congressman has his way. Catch the third and final part of the series tomorrow right here on Newsnight. On Monday, July 25th, CNN Philippines will bring you President Marcos's first sauna straight from the Batasang Pambansa in Quezon City at 2 in the afternoon. Tune in to our live coverage also of the opening of Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, beginning at 9:30 a.m. Poll watchdogs sound the alarm as Congress pushes for another postponement of the December 5 barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. Lawmakers want the polls to be rescheduled to next year or even to 2024 to divert the 8.4 billion peso budget to pandemic and infrastructure projects. Watchdogs believe this is not the way to save funds as expenses are already accumulating with election preparations.
Hindi totoo na masasave natin itong 8 billion na to or 8.4 billion na ito para kung hindi natin to gagawin. Kasi gagawin din naman natin eh. Hindi ko alam kung saan ang wisdom noon ng mga nagpo-propose ngayon.
Paano naman yung mga barangay na hindi maayos yung kanilang barangay DXKP official? So kailangan na nating ibalik sa mga tao yung karapatan na paltan o i-re-elect ulit yung mga barangay DXKP officials nila.
Another election watchdog, NAMFREL, says many youth leaders serving since 2018 are already overaged. More stories here on Newsnight. No signs of stopping for BTS. 4 members releasing a new song with 2 chart-topping artists next month. And an appeal for help from the family of this track and field icon who's battling breast cancer. Stay tuned.
Baby, I'm home! Happy as all.
RPN DXKP Pagadian. Ang inyong Radyo Ronda RPN. RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world. Pinaagi sa FB page. Karon, mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play o Apple Store, YouTube o Twitter. Alang sa mas kipakuskan ng mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran o kalingawan. Ang mas kipakuskan ng inyong Radyo Ronda Network. Kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Welcome back. Sports bodies give financial aid to track and field queen Lydia De Vega, who is now in very critical condition because of breast cancer. The Sports Commission donated 300,000 pesos, while the Philippine Olympic Committee gave 100,000. Lydia's daughter appealed for prayers and financial assistance online after revealing that her 57-year-old mother has been battling stage 4 breast cancer for 4 years now. Lydia De Vega is one of the most decorated athletes in Philippine sports. She was dubbed Asia's fastest woman in the 1980s, holding national records for over 3 decades. In the NBA, James Harden stays with the Philadelphia 76ers, but with a contract worth less than a previous deal. ESPN reports the 2018 league MVP agreed to a $68.6 million 2-year deal, $33 million set for the season. Hardin said in an interview with the Associated Press that he declined his $47.4 million option last month, so the money could go towards a better lineup for the championship. Philadelphia recently signed Hardin's former Houston teammates P.J. Tucker and Daniel House. On to entertainment news. BTS armies can look forward to yet another collaboration from the K-pop sensation rapper Snoop Dogg, producer Benny Blanco, and BTS's Jin, Jimin, V, and Jungkook are releasing the track Bad Decisions on August 5th. The music video will come out the same day. Danish singer-songwriter Maximilian is ready to serenade Filipino fans after waiting 2 years to come to the country. The artist behind the viral hit Beautiful Scars will perform at the Eastwood Mall in Quezon City on Friday and the Venice Grand Canal Mall in Taguig on Saturday. CNN Philippines New Day got a preview of what fans can expect for his two-night concert.
Let's sing one. I mean, Beautiful Skies. I wrote that song, man. All right. That's it. I'm not gonna fight back what I've become. Yeah, I got bruises where I came from, but I wouldn't change if I could restart. I ain't gonna hide these beautiful skies. I've been going way too hard on myself. Guess that is the reason I've been feeling like hell. But I wouldn't change if I could restart. I ain't gonna hide these beautiful scars.
Maximilian also said the Filipino community back home helped the 2019 track skyrocket to fame. For a tale as old as time, this Grammy-winning Filipino-American singer is set to play a Disney princess. Her was cast as Belle in ABC Network's Beauty and the Beast 30th anniversary special airing in December. News outlet Deadline says the director of hit movie Crazy Rich Asians will executive produce the musical special. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
The idea of a president's first 100 days has its origins in the United States in the early 1930s as the country wallowed in the Great Depression. The brave and bold actions that then-President Franklin Delano Roosevelt took would define both his first 100 days and the rest of his presidency. Today, here in the Philippines and here on CNN Philippines, we'll keep a close eye on President Bongbong Marcos's first 100 days.
We do not look back, but ahead. Up the road that we must take to a place better than the one we lost in the pandemic. Gains made and lost, opportunities missed, well-laid plans superseded by the pandemic. And if you ask me why I am so confident of the future, I will answer you simply that I have 110 million reasons to start with. Such is my faith in the Filipino.
We'll start with a closer look at his many firsts in office barely a week since taking his oath. His first executive act on a bill passed by Congress, his first cabinet meeting, his first public briefing, even his first Monday flag-raising ceremony. What are the priorities and promises of the 17th President of the Philippines? Good evening, I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. My guests tonight here in the studio, political analyst Richard Hidarian and former presidential spokesperson Edwin Lacerda. Hi, Richard and Edwin. Thank you very much for being here. You're all smiles. Parang ito na naman tayo. Anyway, we're talking about, well, for tonight we're talking about the first 6 days of the first 100 days of BBM, now President Marcos. Let's begin with his inaugural address. I presume you were both watching live, no? Your thoughts muna. Edwin.
Well, it's a welcome change from the previous one. The thing was, it's very traditional. It's a welcome change because there was a clear message that I will better the economy. What one noticed a lot of certain statements which were not accurate. But by and large, it was what do you,
like which ones were inaccurate?
he mentioned a number of things about the father. He mentioned that he had the biggest approval mandate in history. That's not true because by percentage-wise, you don't count it by the number of people who voted because that's a function of population, but rather you count the percentage, which is a function of total number of voters who voted for him. So there's a big difference.
As against the voter turnout.
As against the voter turnout. Yeah. So it's only 58%. That's about, if I'm not mistaken, he has the third highest.
Third.
So that's inaccurate in that regard. And also the statements about his father. But by and large, it was well written. It was a well written speech. From somebody listening to it, you'd welcome that.
Yeah, and for someone who's worked for a president, worked in Malacanang,
it's also good for the international community because the diplomats would not be if it was delivered in Tagalog like how Pinoy did it. I'm sure they were just listening, but not knowing what's being spoken. But here, the international community, more importantly, the international community, because they're the ones where our economy is in a difficult situation. So you want the international community to be assured that, hey, this is a new guy coming in, LC, predictability of business rules and all that. So that's something that by and large welcome. But locally, of course, the critics would point out the false statements. But I think from a quite an objective point of view, it was something that a president-elect had a good delivery.
Which line did you like best?
Huh?
Which line did you like best? A fair question to you.
Well, it's really basically on the soundbite thing. It's about your pangarap mo, pangarap ko. But the other thing also, I mentioned this previously, he didn't mention corruption. Because that's also a staple of each president when he comes in. He will promise that he will wipe out, curb corruption at least.
Right.
Here, he didn't even invoke fighting corruption, which is, I would understand that because he's a Marcos and the legacy of the father being one of tainted with corruption would not sit well and would even be attacked by the critics. So might as well leave that out and let's say some things. And he spoke about unity also. I mean, it is a very unifying
unity. He didn't talk about the 31 million who voted for him, but the 110 million.
As he should be. As he should. No? As he should, because he's not the president of the entire country.
Mahirap naman to start quarreling.
Yes,
on day one, ano. Richard?
Yes, now suddenly I regret not having coffee. Not my 100%.
Pwede pa tayo maghabol ng friends mo.
First of all, the question I have is who helped with the speech, right? Who wrote the speech? We see a lot of rumors being thrown out there, and later na ako mag-name drop maybe off the record. I don't know. I mean, I heard even people maybe Edwin can better say
I had
that.
some, but it's also.
Yeah, we have to confirm. But speaking of that, I mean, the whole event was screaming nostalgia, right? I mean, the last president that gave a speech in that place was President Manuel Rojas. This is a wartime president. We're coming out of the ashes of war. He's asking on people to help him, for the nation to rally behind him. Well, you see very much a parallel there. He's been saying we're coming out of pandemic. There are a lot of problems. So at the same time, even the critics would say that was a breath of fresh air, as nostalgic as it was. Even the style of his speech, I mean, it looks very much like his dad, right? The way he angles like that and gets the speech out.
He's his father.
Right, but considering we are coming from Duterte, some would say it's a breath of fresh air. I even heard critics saying that we're jumping from fire to the frying pan. So it's quite an improvement from what we had in the past.
Yeah.
Moreover, it was a speech that was a masterpiece in navigational politics. I mean, the way he navigated very thorny issues, right? He mentions Ukraine, but doesn't take sides. He mentions pandemic. He kind of talks about mismanagement, but doesn't criticize Duterte, right? He gives credit to his dad, at the same time say, let's not dwell too much on the past, let's look forward, right? I mean, if you look at it, it was very well navigated. I mean, the way the speech was constructed. Again, I was saying, who helped with him? Is this his speech, etc.? And then the other thing is clearly he was talking to the international audience. You got the Governor General of Australia there, Wang Qishan, the right-hand man of Xi Jinping there, the second gentleman of US there. I think that's why there was a lot of English. And not only any English, the prose was really meant to impress the international community. So I think Marcoses are aware that there's a certain reputational problem they have to deal with. He wants to visit the White House. He wants to go to the West.
And
so I think he was
visiting
trying to
the
also
White
impress the international community. That was very clear. That's all very much I saw with the inauguration. Yeah.
So who wrote it? Who helped write it?
I don't know. I heard baka matroll ako sa Twitter. Although one of those guys that I suspected blocked me on Twitter, so I don't know if it's really him or not.
Oh,
we
so
can talk about.
You tweeted about who blocked you?
No, he
Check.
blocked me
Okay.
before, but let's get that.
All right. Oh, one other thing about the inaugural, ang daming nagre-react eh, the inaugural medallion, the souvenir. No, there was a lot of reaction from netizens who were, well, Lenny supporters, Lenny voters, no. Ano yan, ba't ang bilis naman magpagawa, etc. Edwin, you have institutional knowledge kasi you used to.
Traditional yan eh. You know, each president issues a medallion except for Cory, post-EDSA.
I remember Digong's noong 2016. I had a
Si
picture.
Pinoy meron din, si Digong meron din. So it's you know, we're living in a very polarized society right now. Unlike previously, for instance, in 2016, it was also polarized, but not quite as polarized because it became an issue of Marcos versus to a certain matagal na yung labanan eh. It's been a long-drawn battle between Lenny and Bongbong Marcos way back in 2016. So it's quite the passion you were discussing. The passion was really intense. So you could see that anything that comes out from the Marcos side, which is pictured as being luxurious, is immediately attacked. But historically, medallions have been given as part of a memorabilia of a incoming president.
Do you want to say something about
Well,
that?
I mean, people even made issues out of his watch, right? So, like, if people are going to zoom in what is in the watch, right? And what kind of gestures people were making before the speech, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think the new president, or any president in the future, has to get used to this. This is about the information ecosystem as much as it's about the polarized political environment. I was thinking, what if I'm the president and then I make a slip of tongue or something like that? People are going to exaggerate. This spliced video phenomenon. This is the reality. So, you know, it may serve you one day, it may serve in the other.
You're under microscope and then
Exactly.
pag ganyan, no? Someone as
24/7 news cycle. I mean, this is just the reality we're going to face right now. And I think the Marcoses, right, they may have won the presidency, but they're not the kings. We're not in an absolute monarchy, right? So there's going to be freedom of expression. There are a lot of people who are not happy or passionately against him. So I think this is something that will be the lay of the land for the foreseeable future.
No, the fact is, presidents live in a fishbowl. And that's a staple for every president. The thing, however, is that people are commenting on the very, very formal style because there's nothing yet substantive. Except, for instance, except perhaps for the first statement that he made, which was a mistake, saying that he doesn't believe in the June inflation rate. That's quite substantive.
We'll talk about that mamaya. Wait.
Right now, kasi there's nothing to speak of substantively.
Yeah, but it's too early, right?
It's too early.
It's day 6 pa lang.
We're talking about day 6.
Day 6 of the first 100 days. And then, teka, sabi mo, fishbowl. Pero kanina sabi ni Richard, frying pan. Ano ba talaga? But anyway, wait. Let's talk about very quickly before we go to break. The veto on this special economic zone for Bulacan, quite controversial in the sense na, ano nangyari dito, di ba? Para bang, how did you look at that, Richard?
Well, I mean, look at it. Over the past month or so, there has been a lot of, let's call it, who's the boss, you know, kind of moves, right? Whether in the appointments on D&D, everyone was expecting it will go to Sara Duterte. It went to someone else. Speaker of the House, everyone was expecting it to go to someone else. You get what I'm saying? And so I see this also is about showing the boss, right? Like, maybe the previous administration had certain preferences, had certain networks of businessmen they wanted to work. We're going to start from scratch, or we have a different take on things. Now, on the issue, of course, look at it. He didn't only cite fiscal risk. He discussed environmental issues. He even discussed national security consideration, considering that Clark is close to Subic, right, and some of our military facilities. I like it. I mean, brilliant. I mean, I think all of the issues which were raised there, I think is very reassuring. Now, let's hope this is not just a, flash in the pan, but this is actually an indication of a reboot, including in the infrastructure strategy of the previous administration. And remember, even on the infrastructure development, Balisacan and Jokno have different takes. between themselves, but also compared to the previous administration. Do we need fiscal consolidation? Do we need more PPP? Do we need more reliance on China, international investors, or domestic taxes, etc.? So I don't know. For me, that's a good reboot so far that we saw on that front. Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the first cabinet meeting and that agriculture cluster meeting that was held on Monday, July 4th. We'll be back after this quick break. Stay tuned.
I think that I will have to disagree with that number. We are not that high. We have crossed our targets were less 4% or less. Unfortunately, it looks like we may cross that threshold. Tatawid tayo sa 4%.
Let me begin by saying that the President's disbelief at the 6.1% June 2022 inflation rate figure was misunderstood. Okay? He was referring to it as a full year figure when in fact the year to date, meaning January to June, average inflation rate is actually 4.4%.
Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. We're still talking about what's happened so far. Day 6 of the first 100 days of this new Marcos presidency, the new Marcos administration. Ito na nga yung sinasabi ni Edwin kanina, right? Itong 6.1% inflation. You had an interesting tweet about that. You said that...
Yeah, because, you know, coming from experience, I know that the president is always informed ahead of time. Inflation rate, GDP. In fact, RC is still the NEDA head.
Right.
So I worked out a situation, a coordination with RC where every time, before you announce, 1 hour before, you give me the report so that we can go through it. Number one, so that we can respond to questions if we're asked. Number two, so that we will not be blindsided. So the president gets all these reports. Text yan, sir, this is the inflation rate. Sir, this is the GDP. So you cannot say na hindi mo alam. And noteworthy is the same day lumabas the inflation rate, RC was there. Ben Jokno was there with him in the palace. So either he was briefed or he wasn't given, or maybe they haven't worked out a system where the president is informed of any economic report. But nonetheless, I saw the rationalization of Secretary Jokno, but the question was very clear. He mentioned June inflation report. And maybe it's from where I'm coming from my experience, he was responding based on stock knowledge. So it's possible that 4.4 ang sinasabi. It's true naman, there's a target. But the question was very direct. Either he didn't hear it or it was really based on stock knowledge. But if you go through the PSA report, the reasons for the increase was food.
So maybe better preparation. But they had this memorandum circular and requiring CSW complete staff work for everything.
You don't have to have a memorandum order for that. CSW is a required part of government in the same way that a briefing papers are required for any CEO. I mean, that's not something that we didn't have a memorandum order for a CSW. It started by Ramos.
Yeah,
and
right.
Every president is required to do a CSW so that you don't embarrass the president when he speaks.
Ganun kasi.
I mean, he didn't choose to have a spokesman, right? I mean, there's a reason why they're spokespersons, right? It's a profession, right? To avoid this kinds of situation. Remember yung Solgen situation? People made a lot of big issue. So I think people are trying to say it's the same thing. Well, I think the problem was when he tried to explain the situation, it became much more convoluted. Basically, what he meant was a lot of our imports are foreign denominated. So when peso depreciates, they're going to be more expensive, and therefore that explains a huge part of our uptick in inflation.
Ganda na explanation mo.
But I also didn't understand why he had to justify that, because that wasn't his doing. That was the previous administration. So what? Just take it.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like he was
take
trying
it
to
and
say,
then just say that
wala tayong mga gawa dyan. Like it's not my fault. This is because of, and he also had to say, hindi lang Pilipinas ang bumaba yung foreign exchange, lahat ng mga Asian countries. So when he tried to over-explain it, it got convoluted. So I think the issue is less about him denying the inflation rate. It's more about him not properly grasping the issue. At least that's what the critics were trying to say. But my understanding is the president was simply saying, Dollar is on the rise, peso is on the decline, imports are expensive, therefore inflation is picking up. But that's the problem. Sometimes you shouldn't explain things too much, you get into trouble.
But it's not a function entirely of the dollar when the inflation rises. Sometimes we had also, we can control the inflation rate, but depends on, certainly the global factors. There were global factors for that, but it shouldn't be, the bottom line is, there's a report, just take it as it is, report, and say what your solutions would be.
Okay, we have a minute and a half before we go to another break. But before that, very quickly, I wanted to talk about the first cabinet meeting that was held yesterday, Tuesday, July 5. No? Ang daming, una-una, and ito na naman tayo, no? Because he's a Marcos, lahat talaga papansinin sa lahat, kikilatisin sa kanya, di ba? Ang dami nagsabing, bakit hindi nung June 30, nag-cabinet meeting, which is the traditional and the expected thing to happen, no? I don't know. I can't remember.
We did. But we did. Our first cabinet meeting was on
the day of the inaugural. No, but it's not a requirement that it has to be on that same day.
It's really the president formally gathering his cabinet, and it was really informing everyone. These are my expectations and all that. It's natural. The first one. In fact, ours was not very, very long. It didn't reach 4 hours.
Yeah. But is it an issue, as some netizens said it was, that why was it held on Tuesday, July 5, and not on June 30, Thursday?
I think our countrymen should expect each president has his own style, his or her own style. So shouldn't be judging them from what your predecessor does it. For as long as you deliver on your promises. Sa akin, simple lang yan. I mean, he did a 4-hour cabinet meeting, not to justify the president, but he did a 4-hour fundamentally economic briefing yung ginawa niya.
Right.
So, but problema talaga tayo in economy. But I think that's more on form rather than substance. Sa akin, so what if it's the second day?
Hindi kasi ang daming nagsasabi, bakit nauna daw yung birthday party ni Imelda, bakit ginawa sa Malacanang, ang daming pinapansin.
Hintayin na lang natin mga substantive ng criticism, which is more important for us rather than all this formal criticism.
Yeah. Well, speaking of substantive, before we go to a break, 30 seconds, Enrique Manalo as DFA Secretary, a lot of people were praising that appointment, right?
I mentioned that. When you were asking us kung sino magiging DFA Secretary, I said, Enrique Manalo should be the one. He's a very competent. I met him when he was ambassador to UK. I was in UK. He's very, very competent. And he's a son of two top diplomats as well. So he's steeped in diplomacy.
Richard,
wala pang DOH secretary, right?
DOH, DNR,
that's the point.
DOE.
That's why it's a bit of mixed baggage. I think, obviously there are going to be loyalists there. They're very competent technocrats there, progressive technocrats, even like Balisacan. Enrique, fantastic with Ambassador Manalo. There were a number of names we were looking at. This is the best outcome we could have wished for, right? Brilliant. I love it. And by the way, he's the first one in 2 decades na career diplomat ang magiging hindi interim, but more or less hopefully permanent foreign secretary. So this is a great job. Last time was 2003 to 2004, diba? When we had our first female foreign secretary, right? So that's a great thing. But yun nga DOH secretary, wala pa. And we're already in the first week.
Kasi may nag-hedge pa kasi, di ba?
Yeah, that's my point. 3 weeks ago, sabi ni Bongbong Marcos na he's narrowed na yung choices. So, parang...
And nag-decline muna daw kasi yung isa, kaya...
Filipinos Got Talent ba to? Ang tagal na to, di ba? Medyo priority. And so I think that's the one cabinet position where he could get some criticism for not showing urgency. But the fact that during his inauguration, tumayo siya when the frontliners were coming in, I think that was his way of saying, don't worry, alagaan ko kayo. I know how important your job is. And to be fair to President Marcos Jr., ang laki ng problema sa loob ng DOH, right? Oh my goodness. You need a big cleanup. So you need to bring someone who's not only respected by doctors for her or his expertise, but a good manager who can clean up the system because the mess is big.
Okay. Since tonight's big word is first, so pag-usapan din natin yung first press briefing. I'm sure you watch it also, Edwin, and you, sanay ka dun as press secretary, as spokesperson, sorry. What did you think of the press briefing? Was the media, the Malacanang press corps, allowed to ask questions? Was it something we expected or something unexpected because we thought na?
Yeah, I think he, except for that June inflation rate, he performed pretty well.
May mga nagtatanong,
it's basically stock knowledge. It's basically stock knowledge because I know they haven't really focused on what will be the executive decisions. Or he hasn't made any executive decision. If you notice in his cabinet meeting, he said that or in his briefing, he said, "I'm going to give you free rein. I'll delegate the responsibility of forming your own your organization structure, whatever decisions." He left, for instance, for the economic team, the economic decisions to be made. But that's standard. But the thing is but it's basically broad statements, motherhood statements, nothing specific, which is okay because there's really nothing substantive yet or specific that they have discussed.
But could he be the kind of president na, he recognizes that other people are the subject matter expert and therefore he would trust them, for example?
Well, apparently, he trusted the RCN Ben Jokno. That's very clear. I mean, he also gave them free rein to manage their own organizations, which is really an important thing. You don't micromanage. That's important.
Right. You can't.
You cannot manage. Also, one thing, he mentioned that we plan to do 2 cabinet meetings a week. If it was me, I wouldn't do it.
Once a week lang? Or
No, I don't think. Because give them free rein. I mean, you don't have to, you can meet small groups Like we did it every day. We met in small groups. I mean, cabinet.
Yung clusters.
Even smaller than a cluster.
And not in, like you said, in the Aguinaldo Hall.
By the way, if I suggest to President Marcos, please don't meet regularly in the Aguinaldo room.
Because
the chairs are old-fashioned, very nice craft,
ergonomically
challenged.
Sasakit lang ang mga
We did an 11-12 hour budget meeting in the cabinet room. And then everybody was saying, "Sir, baka pwedeng palitan na natin ang sili."
More from our guests when we return. This is Politics as Usual.
There is a common misconception that calisthenics and weight training are mutually exclusive. Combining these types of training can be tricky at first, but when done correctly and with the proper balance, you can actually enjoy the benefits of them. So just pace yourself. This is a time-based workout, so let me show you just how we can do that in today's workout, which we'll be calling hybrid calisthenics.
You're still with the Politics as Usual. We are on our final stretch. Joining me here in the studio, Richard A. Darian and Edwin Lasher. Renaming na iya
shouldn't be a priority.
Wow, priorities in the midst of an inflation, right? Whether you agree with it or not.
Okay. Pero yun
by the way, respect also. I mean, Nino Aquino was assassinated there. Have some respect for the guy's memory.
And let's stop changing the names,
Exactly.
streets, everything.
Just fix the airport or get a new nice airport for us. That's what we need now.
Bulacan nga.
Hindi unity yan, Hindi unity yan. It will be very polarized.
Pero hindi naman yun Malacanang si
Correct.
Teves, congressman. Okay. All right. Also, before we end the show, itong Monday flag raising ceremony. I know, like Edwin was explaining kanina, wala pa namang talagang substantive. So every little thing pinapansin natin, di ba? First 6 days pa lang. But what were your thoughts when you saw Monday flag raising ceremony? Andun siya, nag-attend, tapos may turnover ng PSG. Naglalakad, natutrooping the line, sumasaludo.
Sa akin, it's a sea change. Kasi yung predecessor niya, hapon na nagpapakita sa publiko I mean, talagang malaking pagbabago sa akin yun. It's like
me too. I wasn't used to it. Parang, it's morning.
Daytime president.
Yeah.
Richard is was a nice way of saying it.
Richard?
No, I mean, for me, I will take motherhood statements and generic comments over ad-libs and midnight stream of subconsciousness anytime. Let me just put it that way.
Tsaka maaga press conference.
Yes, maaga.
Nagulat ako doon.
Yeah, exactly. So I think people should put things into perspective when we talk about this president. I think it's definitely a sea change for good. Let's not forget, he's a Department of Agriculture secretary too. So he has to be hands-on on that because that's a big issue. If you want food security, you want economic prosperity, inclusive development, everything there in his inauguration, he has to have an overhaul there. Not only the department, dealing with the cartels, predatory intermediaries, taking care of the farmers, and I'm